All right, Peter, I've heard you raving about Qwen 3.8 all week. What is so special about Qwen 3.8 27B?
So I've been testing this model, and I must say, I didn't think much about it. I just thought, another small model, whatever. But after testing, it really looks like pretty incredible model for its size. Normally, these models, when they're so small, they're kind of unimpressive, but that one really matches the performance of much bigger models. So it's particularly exciting release.
How is it different than other open source models?
We had a few really big open source models come out. We had Kimi K3, we had Qwen as well. I think it was something like Kimi K3, I think was like 2.8 trillion parameters. Then Qwen 3.8 max was 2.4 trillion parameters. And this one is 27B. So the size difference is enormous. The problem with having really large open source models is that you still can't run them. So if you are an individual developer, there's no hardware that anyone has of that sort of size that you can actually run. But the difference here, you can actually run it yourself on your own hardware.
So 27B, it's significantly smaller. What's the significance of that? Like, what does that matter to us?
Yeah. So if you're a developer and you've got a decent, say, MacBook, or you've got some GPU, you can just download it on your laptop and you can pretty much run it. So my flight over here, I was running it while I was flying over, and it was actually running at a pretty decent speed. One of the big advantages of this particular release is that suddenly you have much bigger context window. So you can run it on your laptop with a modest context size. So for example, maybe 32K, something like that. But this model has been trained to run, I think the standard one is to 260K context window, which is quite a lot. And also Qwen team said that if you run it via the cloud, they can also extend it to 1 million context window, which is enormous. I actually don't remember a small model like that having that kind of context window. But the nuance there is that now you might struggle to run that full context on your laptop. So you might need to maybe upgrade, maybe something like maybe a beefier GPU. So there's more nuances. You can't necessarily take the full advantage of the model if you just run it on your laptop.
So you can test it on a laptop, but it's not super practical if that's your daily driver. Do you have recommendations?
So I would say it is practical for, let's say, if you're going to ask a question, use it at chat, and offline, let's say your internet goes down, you can use it. That's quite nice. I would say the one advantage of this model, and that's how we were testing on agent mode on Arena, is that when I was doing some of the bigger generations, it was actually generating, I think, something like 400,000 tokens. So then your context window really balloons. So if you and the important part is that it's actually able to do these more heavy agentic tasks. So if you want to start doing these heavy agentic tasks, you might need kind of a beefier hardware. There are a bunch of API providers that you can also use it, which actually kind of goes against the being open and so on, but at least that's kind of an option. So if you want to try it out, you can probably, depends on your laptop or your local hardware, you can probably do it. If you want to take advantage of your full agentic capabilities, you might need something else.
Can you tell us a little something about the cost of using something like Qwen 3.8 27B?
Yeah, so that one is an interesting one. So as we're recording this now, it feels a little expensive to me. So if you're going to go online and just look up the prices, I think it's like double the cost of Luna, which is OpenAI's latest, smallest model. But I expect for the cost to come down. So that's kind of strange. I think that's one to look out for. I'm not entirely sure why the cost is like that, because if you compare it to, I think it was Gemma 31B, I think it's about a third of the price to what Qwen 27B is like. So that's something to look out for why that's the case. It could be just kind of teething pains, maybe just at the beginning as the providers are kind of building up the capability. But maybe I would hope it goes down to about what Gemma kind of price. So it should be about a third of what it is now. And then we already had it ranking pretty well on the agent mode. So I think on agent mode, it was something like 26, which kind of doesn't sound that impressive. But remember, It's like 1/100th of the size of like so many more models. So it's really punching above its weight. And if the cost comes down, then I think it will be completely incredible model.
So for its size, it's really doing incredible things. Do you have any final thoughts on what this could possibly mean for the short term of open source models?
So this is interesting. So I did not think beforehand that models of that size would be that useful, because a lot of the time, not that sort of competent, but the problem was always reliability. And for me, if I can't reliably use this model, for example, make tool calls or something like that, then it's kind of no use, because I can walk around the model being not very smart. I just don't give it the stars, or maybe engineer extra context or whatever. But if it actually can't make the tool call or doesn't do what you tell it, then it's very hard to work with. So I think this is the first model that I remember testing that seems to be able to do more reliable types of work for a longer period of time. So I think that's kind of feels like over the threshold of a little bit of a breakthrough in that space. So if this holds, and maybe we can even get even smaller models behaving in this kind of way, then you could really make use of a local model doing useful things. Because I think right now, maybe you have a small model on your phone or something like that. It's kind of fun, but it's not that useful. So it feels like we could be over the threshold that they really become useful. And then I'm very bullish on these kind of models.
So big strides for open source, but even more so for the size of the model and capabilities and reliability.
Yeah, and I would say that's the important part, right? Because to be honest, we had big open source models. It's nice theoretically that they're open. The problem is you still need to rely on a cloud provider who's going to have beefy hardware, where they're going to have run in their big data centers. Me as a personal developer, I know intellectually it's nice, but in practice it's not that useful. But now suddenly that I have an option, just download it myself, or maybe I have like a little setup at home with a maybe stronger GPU than my laptop, then suddenly it is useful. So yeah, it's a big deal.